sexy bitch. Yeah, just hang there for a little bit. Oh yeah, sound effects. Whoosh. Music. Harry Gregson Williams. Man, what a hero.
Yeah, no. While he did compose this excellently scored intro theme and most of the other music that plays during the cutscenes in this here MGS2, he isn't at all what I would call the lead composer, as you see, the music that you hear while walking around the tanker, while fighting Fat Man, and while the Colonel loses his fucking nut all over your nanomachines wasn't composed by Harry Gregson Williams. It was instead done by a man who gets fuck all credit, Norihiko Hibino. Starting off at Konami doing music for Zone of the Enders, soon moving to MGS2 as the, you guessed it, main composer. Specializing in jazzy music, pictured here with his sex sax. He would produce all of the funky, memorable, jive-worthy tunes that you can probably already hear in the back of your head simply by seeing some footage of not quite Big Boss getting his caution mode on. Why is it gotta be like this, though? Why was Harry the one to get the top bill? Well, if the backstabby disregardation of the entire previous voice cast over his big money face meant for V is anything to go by, and literally his entire online presence, I think it's safe to assume that Kojima really likes Hollywood. In fact, he wants to be Hollywood. Dude loves it, thus jumping at the chance to bill some guy who only did a handful of mostly good but generic action movie score musics over the person doing the actual composing and most of the actual scoring too. Yeah, Norihiko even refitted and restructured some of Harry's scores to fit better with the cutscenes, so really, while I'm not doing this to discredit Williams' work at all, in fact, for 2 especially, I think his plastic, cold, and grossly electronic drones and orchestral swells perfectly match the tone of the game as a whole. I do think that we need to take this eraser tool here and just remove this and then type Norihiko Hibino right there. Yeah. Metal Gear music is many things, above all, pretty fucking catchy. This tradition would start with the first game and its song, The Theme of Tara, named that as Kojima would adorably hum ta-da along with it, which was originally written and composed by Iku Mizutani, who would also work on other big 80s games like Snatcher, Shatterhand, which I don't actually know if it's good or not, but it's called Shatterhand, so shut up, loads of sports games, and is still active today doing the butt rock for KOF games. I mean, look at him. That's one butt rock looking boy. Anyway, things were a bit derpy, but so was the game, and it was certainly a melody that conveyed the sneak perfectly using little Pink Panther-esque step melodies. Metal Gear 2, though, is where things would get a bit more real, being that the game had a total of 7 composers, with Tsuyoshi Sekito being the main one, as he's the only one with his own Wikipedia article. Plus, he also did the music for Mind Jack.
Rebecca Weiss, don't be scared.
Scared? I'm furious.
Listen, lady, you're a high-profile activist and your file's got a 5-star pain-in-the-ass rating.
Anyway, shit got tense, cold, and spooky. Definitely getting a bit more of a Hollywood atmosphere than what chiptune music of the time would usually go for. With white noise simulating the vents and filtration systems that keep the bass alive, and a heartbeat doing the same for Snake. FM synthesis is what allowed for this, mainly the Yamaha 2149 sound chip, which wasn't too dissimilar from the other sound chips found in, say, the Sega Mega Drive and various home computers. If you are familiar, it's likely because of that tinny sound often found in old DOS games and Genesis titles. It wasn't a great sound, but not really due to the sound chip itself. The interfacing used to program for it sucked ass, you see. The Gena Drive one in partic was notoriously garbo, limiting those who done know to make and allowing those who did to be all like. And for DOS and other PC shit, the music was also written in MIDI and thus wouldn't necessarily be made with the FM sounds in mind, resulting in maximum clunk. Still, it would be this metallic sound that would come to define the audio stylings of the edgy and the urban. Streets of Rage, the Sonics, sci-fi RPGs like Phantasy Star, and games like Gunstar Heroes would all greatly benefit from how distinctly electronic shit was. And Metal Gear 2 was truly no different. I mean, the entire game would take place inside of an army base. The gray metal flooring, the armed masked men distilled down to faceless personnel IDs, and the sauna are all represented pretty well by this here music, using military marching drums for obvious reasons. But it's the sterile, harsh, and sharp sounds of the sound chip that truly conveyed how clinical this place be. As the haunting synth melodies cautiously fade in and out, keeping the sneak vibes alive, and the bleepy bloopy arps and plucks reminiscent of 80 interface scenes with the wireframes and shit, keeping things Carpenter. Metal Gear Solid's iconic main theme was composed by Tappy Iwase, often credited as an all-caps Tappy. So iconic, in fact, that it's not really used in any of the actual games, as far as I can tell. I mean, it's here in the trailers. It sold me on the entire series even. My friend had a demo disc showing Snake planting loads of C4 and blowing Moses as shit play, which was at the time the hypest thing ever, and so we bought it on the GameCube. But already we can kind of see a weird bit of that Hollywood movie ambition creeping up here, seeing as Kojima clearly opted to use the best is yet to come, a Gaelic piece of Irish, which, granted, fits better than... What? I can't understand you. Some people say it was plagiarism from some old-ass Russian music, and... yeah, it's a similar chord progression, but it's not at all the same song, so piss off and stop being ignorant to how music works, you fuck. The main theme is like all of those fucking triumphant themes, like the Star Wars one, the Indiana Jones one, the other big movie one, I don't know. Those are all using the same chords too, because those chords bring in the hero vibes. It's just one of them things, so of course shit finna sound the same, Jesus. Next thing you know, they're gonna blame generic 80s butt rock composers of plagiarizing generic 80s butt... oh, fuck off. Tappy wouldn't actually work on any of the other songs from NGS, funnily enough, as instead, it again used 5 fucking composers for the entire score, none of whom have Wikipedia pages. Kazuki Muraoka, though, was actually the one responsible for the music of the NES version of Metal Gear, which was the only good thing about that version. And he also was the sound designer and director on literally all of the Solid games, editing music to fit the scenes and adding shit like that. And honestly, the fact that MGS1 had a designer and sound director at the helm does explain a lot about its music, considering that most of the game consists out of these chilly, machine-like drones that sound more like a choir of humming ventilation shafts topped off by airy bell chimes and tense marching percussion than straight-up catchy music. Though, that isn't to say that the other 4's contributions didn't add either. Lee Jeon-myung, for instance, is part of the actual Konami sound team, and thus has worked on games like Suikoden as someone who did arrangements, i.e. picking out the instrumentation and adding things like those airy bell chimes to top shit off proper tense. And while with Maki Kirioka I couldn't quite tell what she did for Metal Gear Solid, she is also the one behind the female vocal tracks in Zone of the Enders and its weirdly tribal sounding cyberpunk music, so awards should be given thusly. Zoe also being where Norihiko Hibino got his Konami start as stated, and he also did loads of music for Yakuza 2, Rumble Roses XX, Bayonetta, some of the Ace Combat games, all of which are already big dick enough, but most importantly here, he did all of the legendary in-game songs for MGS 2 through 4 and Portable Ops. And yet, here we are. Part of me really wants to go through all of his jazzy ass shit and why it's so goddamn perfect for a series as cheeky and sneaky as Metal Gear, but that would take ages, and I feel like everyone watching this would already be deeply familiar anyway. Besides, I think that just saying that he wrote the Snake Eater theme song is more than enough to highlight that his name should fucking be here. Originally, this was gonna be a saltier video ranting about how much I hate cinematic scores as it's basically non-music by design, BGM in the most literal sense, and then spent a good minute sucking Norihiko's dick, hiding the fact that I find music theory in videos really boring most of the time, thus resorting to buzzwords like sleuthy, so calm, cold, tense, like a black cat walking across the rooftops at night. But I don't know, I felt like just touching upon some of the games and their composers, highlighting who did what and how a little bit, was a much more constructive and positive effort. Especially because Konami and Kojima sure as shit ain't doing it for them. I guess more so than Kojima's ego, this speaks to a greater issue in the games industry, being that devs are often seen as interchangeable. Telltale's semi-recent bullshit being another good bad example of that, and you know, I care. I love this series, and I find its soundtracks not only perfectly fitting and well composed given the subject matter, but also inspiring in their own right. Norihiko's work in particular. Anything from the frantic, crazed boss music with the drum and bass and acid jazz motifs perfectly punctuating the psychotic and loose cannon nature of Dead Cell, or the densely sparse, bass-heavy, moist music, giving room to the humming of boat bits and the pecking of the rain on the windows to fully flesh themselves out while using stealthy funk bass line and Hoover synths would ramp up to bring tension. To our 60s jungle boy having a bit of a jive to these James Bond-ass guitars of cheeky sneaky, and the drum hits amplifying the sense that someone's sneaking up on you, I think it's all pretty fucking great.